What's up, everybody? So, me and Emily actually spent majority of our day today, of our waking hours, because, as you may or may not know, a majority of our day is in fact sleeping hours, because we're lazy sacks of shit. But a majority of our waking hours were actually spent on finishing up. Super late to the party, but we've been watching it since right around when it came out. The Haunting of Hill House. We finally just got. I think we were like on episode 5. I think we had just finished episode 5 the day before, and we were like, let's just bang this out, because I knew episode 6 was like the really like well directed, well shot episode in terms of like it was all done in like mostly long ass continuous takes. I think before like the final like 5 minutes there was only 2 or 3 cuts the whole time, and it was really really well executed. But we decided to knock out the rest of the show. So I just want to talk about that for a little bit today, if you will so indulge me. But it's not like you've seen anything from me in a while, so you have to indulge me. Except when I mass upload this, it fucks up the algorithm, and you won't even get half of these notifications, but that's okay. So yeah, The Haunting on Hill House, The Haunting of Hill House, one of the two. Very good all the way through. And I really like that the story bookends itself nicely. There is room to expand a universe, to expand an anthology. I read something that the director said that the Crane family is pretty much done after this. The sequel wouldn't include anything about them because their story was pretty much told. Something that I think he could do that would be interesting is that obviously one of the main characters, Stephen Crane, is an author, and he has written several books, and it could be interesting to utilize those as a method of telling more stories, and have him sort of interact in that way. But then I don't know, it does come off a little bit goofy at that point. So maybe it's not the best idea, but I still thought it'd be interesting to say the least. I guess let me just say general thoughts. Like I said, very, very good in terms of storytelling, good character arcs, very well directed, well shot series, as a lot of Netflix stuff is. The story that it told was cohesive from beginning to end. Twists, certainly. Some jump scares here and there, which I'm never fond of. I'd much prefer just straight thriller. Just make me think that things are going to jump out at me. Don't actually let them jump out at me. Even though that's equally as bad for my fucking anxiety in that regard. But yeah, just an overall really, really well done horror TV show, which isn't done well or even done at all very often. Although, I personally think that Channel Zero is also very good. Horror TV show, also an anthology, funnily enough. So, I guess, let's see if there's anything else I want to say from a general perspective before I get into spoiler territory. I think that's it, honestly. If you haven't seen it and you care anything about good storytelling in a television series, then certainly go watch it. If horror is not your thing, you might even still like it. It is very much more sort of atmospheric horror, which is to say it's more like terror. It's more like gripping rather than scary in most parts, even though because of that you will naturally become sort of anxious and worried and scared in a sense. But it's not like shit jumping out at you or gore or anything like that. It's more about the psychological, the psychosis of creating that terror welling within you. But I definitely recommend it. There are some things, I think all the way through, there were some interesting decisions and choices made. So I want to talk about a couple of those. So right now, spoilers are about to happen. If you have not seen the entirety of the show, just fucking click out of that tab. If you have not seen, if you haven't seen all the way through all 10 episodes, just go ahead and fucking click out. Spoilers ahead. I'll be talking about a lot of different things from a lot of different episodes, so just fucking do it. Close out right now. That was about 30 seconds of stalling for you to close out, so we're going to jump into it. So I guess there's like two big revelations in the story, both of which I didn't, I guess, figure out probably initially when I should have, but figured out before the reveal. So the big one in episode 5 is obviously that Nellie is the bent neck lady. I was kind of back and forth on it being her or it being her mom. I basically still thought about it as sort of a ghost of a particular person haunting their past and present. But I really liked at the end when she does die and she hangs and she falls, and it shows her falling through each of the scenes as the ghost. They don't really ever explain kind of why those particular scenes. Obviously, it's to showcase like us seeing, the progression from like her death back to her beginning, and then there's also that monologue at the end when she's in the red room talking about like fucking how time is a flat circle, the whole fucking True Detective thing. And so that kind of like gave it a pass. Not to say that there's really any need to delve further into that. It was just strange that like none of the other ghosts seemed to be able to affect things in that manner. So that was kind of interesting. Like there weren't like, and maybe, like the mom never saw herself. Like she saw the kids grown up, right? She saw them in a different time frame. But like, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Why those specific moments seem to stand out. So that was pretty cool. The other really big thing is that the red room was like everyone's room, right? It was their mom's reading room, Steven's game room, the treehouse, Nell's thing, and with that kind of came also earlier in that episode the revelation that like Steve had been seeing ghosts the entire time. And it's funny because while they were doing that story, right, they showed it from both Steve and the mom's perspective of him like running up and like doing all of this. When he ran past that clock dude, I was like, that's a ghost. I was like, that person isn't. Emily was like, yeah, there's no way. He was like, he's not real. I was like, and we kind of made a joke that like none of the fucking workers were real, but it was like the clock repairman in particular seemed so out of place in that shot and in that scene. It turns out he was a ghost, which I thought was a really cool, like, oh shit kind of thing, where it was like, oh man, like, it's kind of, revealing, like, Steve wasn't as immune to this as he thought he was. And then the dad says, I think in the previous episode, he's like, there was never a treehouse. And, Luke played in it all the time. What are you talking about? There wasn't a treehouse. And that sort of got me thinking about, like, there was a couple of times where there were certain things that didn't make any sense, right? And it was all the things that ended up being the red room. I was like, it showed the dance studio once, and I was like, damn. I was like, wow, they have a whole room just for her? And then I liked how they showed in the last episode when Nell and Cheryl are trying to get into the room, and it shows the feet underneath, that was actually Theo in her dance studio. And so they show that at the end, right? Because they show both those scenes separately, but then you connect them. And I remember when we saw the game room for the first time, my thought was like, holy shit, how many fucking rooms are in this house? I was like, because in my brain I was like, there's a reading room. I was like, there's a game room. I was like, the house doesn't look that fucking big. And then he said that thing about the tree house, and I was like, wait a second, tree house? Yeah, he wouldn't have had time to build a tree house. I was like, that doesn't make any sense, right? And so I was just like, in my brain, I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. And then something just clicked, and I was like, oh shit, the red room is everybody's room. And I was like, oh my god, that makes perfect sense. That's why, like, the person was like, what do you mean a game room? And then she's like, which one's the reading room again? It's like, where'd you find all this stuff? And so I think it's interesting though, because he finds that thing in the red room, which is his game room. So how does he, like, I don't understand how the ghost mechanic works there, because every other time we see the red room, the only other time we see it with anything in it is when they're at the table at the end, right? And it's showing them sitting there. But, like, there's never anything else in there, so, like, how does the ghost, are we supposed to assume that, like, everything he was interacting with, he was in a dream, but he was also in a dream, like, laying against the wall, but still somehow, like, he comes out of the dream, but he's still halfway in the dream. He still sees the thing, and he, like, brings the table out. Like, that's the one thing that didn't kind of make any sense, is because it looked like you could go into the red room and imagine whatever you wanted to imagine, but then there was a table in the red room, so clearly things can be put in there, and the mom didn't put in the table. I don't know. That was kind of, it's only upon watching it, digesting it, and really kind of thinking about it that you would notice these things. But it's one of those, like, well, that doesn't kind of make any sense. But regardless of that, still an incredible story all the way through. I really liked the Abigail twist, as it were, that they played her off like she was this imaginary being, and she wasn't. I kind of got punked a little bit, because Mr. Dudley was talking about his daughter and basically saying that she was stillborn, and then Mrs. Dudley was talking about this daughter that they homeschooled and did all this shit with. And so I thought that, like, Abigail was their daughter, but was just like a fake grown-up version, like the baby had died in the house and become a grown-up ghost. And because I could never rectify the fact that they were talking about, I thought they were talking about the same daughter. It never occurred to me that they were talking about two different daughters. One thing I really would have liked to see is more information around the different ghosts in the house. Like, we got the tall man is William, from, like, the exposition in Theo's like, sort of dream state, where the chick she's been talking to is talking about the man walling himself up to protect himself from the sister's guilt and doubt or whatever. And then, like, he came out really tall. And then obviously, like, his wife is the chick with the bandana. And then that was something else that was kind of weird, is, like, they made it seem like the house itself was, like, an evil entity trying to, like, eat people and, like, keep people there. But, like, there were several ghosts that didn't give a fuck if anyone was there. And they didn't try to stop, like, after the dad sacrifices himself, they didn't try to stop the other kids from leaving, right? They didn't try to stop, even when fucking Steve came back, they didn't try to stop it. So, like, it's odd that the dad was, like, I get it, the dad was willing to, like, say, like, I didn't want to, have these people go to the police and tell them that my wife, murdered this girl, a little girl and everything. Like, that, I guess I can understand that to an extent. But then, like, even at the end, there was a thing where, like, he's, like, rushing through the woods with his dying wife to, like, lay her in there so she dies so she can stay there. So it was, like, weirdly, like, it's kind of a good thing to some people. I don't know. But, like, it really made it seem like the girl Poppy was more like the evil thing. The house was just kind of like a fucking, like, halfway house for fucking ghosts. So it was like Steve, I mean, he would obviously hear that the Dudleys died. He also saw the thing where the Dudleys say, don't do this because blah, blah, blah. It's like, once they're dead, he's really not, like, entitled to not just, like, burn that shit down in the middle of the day when apparently the ghosts don't have any effect on anything, right? So, I don't know. There was a couple of, like, little, like, tangential stuff like that where it was like, how do you build stuff out? How do you, when I'm thinking about, just the story and sort of the world. But that's, like, that's the outside stuff, right? When you think about just the story A to B as it was presented, fantastic work. But yeah, I actually think that's going to be it, because I've already talked for 15 minutes about it. There's some other stuff, like, character-wise, that I thought was really well done. I thought all of the characters had a very good arc for them. Some of the reveals for the characters, like Cheryl having the affair, was obvious the further it went in the show. Like, they kept showing her like guy that cheated. And first we thought maybe it was like a husband that had died or like her first husband. But once it got to the point where she was having such a reaction to Theo and Kevin, and then they kept showing him even in the house, I was like, boom, had an affair. All makes sense, all lines up. Still never really really explained, like, was the mom just suffering from mental illness? Did she actually have some sort of like psychic-ish ability? Like, did she have some sort of supernatural phenomenon? Like, obviously, like, Theo seems to think that she can touch people and feel that and like do all of that. So like there was like this very weird indication that the women in the family were somehow like predisposed to the supernatural, but that was never really explained. But yeah, I thought it was a really good show. I'd recommend it to everybody. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Oh no, my thing's off. Now, I will catch you guys tomorrow.